Hey everybody, thanks for joining me again today for our seeds starting, or actually my spring gardening series. And in this episode, we are talking about starting seeds. And today I'm gonna start what we call some tender vegetables or warm, kind of hot season vegetables, and they require a little added heat to get going. So I have this heat mat I'll pull out here in a minute. And these are things like tomatoes, tomatillos, some tender herbs like basil. I love to grow a few different varieties of basil, hot peppers and sweet peppers. So I'm just gonna show you all the instructions really that you could need are on the back of the packages. And most of these tomatoes, for example, you would wanna start around 6 weeks before your last frost date. Our last frost date is May 10th, but I typically wait to put them in the ground just to be sure until probably that last week of May, right around May 20th or so, maybe even later. So it doesn't mean you have to get them in the ground by the certain time. Lots of times I don't even get them into the ground well into June. So anyway, start seeds when you're able to in the spring, but don't do too much before the end of March, or well, not too early, because then your plants are going to get really big and they just need to go in the ground. They'll outgrow their container. So it's my husband's office phone ringing. Sorry about that. Anyway, so I have these little 4-pack little seedling packs, and I like the 4 because, I don't know, it's just what I've used for many years, and I reuse them year after year. If you treat them pretty gently, you can do that. But really, you can start seeds in anything you have. Little cups, you can recycle containers, you can, egg cartons, you know, I've seen people do that. That's pretty small space to start a seedling. But I've used yogurt containers with the kids at school that we recycle, and you can poke holes in the bottom of those, a small yogurt container. So you can be creative with that. I'm just gonna reuse some of these that I have, and I happen to have this seed starting mix on my potting shed. Lots of times I'll just use potting soil if I have it. So just use what you have. And the most important part with the soil though is to, you know, seed starting mix obviously is quite a bit finer, so it is nice to have for little seeds. Just make sure you get it wet. You want it to be like the consistency of a wrung out sponge. So you see how that sticks together like that? It was really dry when I started. So you're gonna add a surprising amount of water and mix it in really good until you're able to, you know, roll it into a ball. And err on the side of being too moist or too wet versus being too dry, because if it's dry when you try to water, when you're done, the seeds will just float up and the water will overflow the edges. It won't sink into the soil. So that's what my tray looks like when I have the dirt in it. Pretty simple. And then what I'm gonna do is, well, here's some of my favorite tomatoes. This is a Black Icicle from Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds. I really like these guys. So I'm gonna start those. A black cherry tomato is another one. Sun Gold is super good. And lots of times I save seeds. I didn't get around to doing that too much last year, so I'm gonna reuse the packet. And I like this Cherokee Purple. There's also Black Prince or Black Krim. I like those deep, darker tomatoes. They're juicy and really delicious. The Black Icicle I use more as a paste tomato. It's not quite as pasty. It has a little more flavor. And this plant is just so tall and beautiful. I really like that one a lot as well. So I'm gonna start those. Here's an early jalapeno that's yummy. I do like to start a few different varieties of sweet peppers. I'm having fun with this Violet Sparkle and Garden Sunshine. These are a few of the seed companies that I like to use. Baker Creek and Lake Valley sometimes, and also Botanical Interests. Here's a purple pepper, which I'm also gonna start that one. And I like doing a few different varieties of basil. So there's Italian Genovese. Of course, you've got to have that. Purple basil is not only just a delicious alternative, but it's really a beautiful plant. And the flowers are great for bees if you let it flower some, and it's just lovely. So, and also lettuce leaf basil I like a lot. It's a little bit bigger leaf. this, I'm probably not going to start the cinnamon basil, but I don't see my the Tulsi holy basil. I love that. It smells so good in the garden, and you can use that to infuse in water or make tea. And I just love that plant. It's just fun to have mixed in with whatever else I'm growing. It smells like pineapple. It's so sweet. So, okay, so I spread this on top there, and let's see, I'm just gonna grab some tomato seeds, and what you wanna do is maybe 3, or I usually do about 3 per little cell there, and I just make a little indent. It'll say on the package if the seed wants to be put at a depth of 1/4 inch or sprinkled on the surface if they're really small. So tomato seeds are about 1/4 inch, so I'll just drop, you know, 1 seed in each hole. Sometimes a couple will go in there, which is, it's not a big deal. It's hard to get them out if that happens. So just leave it, and then once I do that, I will grab a little stake to mark it. And you can use wood stakes, but no, when we're done, we're gonna be covering this with a plastic cover. And if your stake is too tall, you'll have to trim it down so the cover can fit, because we wanna maintain the moisture. So usually we'll use a plastic one, or you can make these out of recycled plastic at home. You can cut up yogurt containers or whatever you have, and then cut it to the height and label it with a Sharpie. I've used wood before, but sometimes wood gets moldy. You can use wood, but if it gets moldy and damp from being inside and under the cover, then the ink can run and can cause a little bit of a problem there. So that is how to do your seeds. Just take a look on the label for those directions. And when you're starting basil seeds are super tiny, so they're a little bit different. You're just gonna sprinkle a few on the top of the soil, and you really won't even need to cover them at all. Just maybe tamp them in just a bit, like that. And then when they get to a certain height in, 3 weeks or so, maybe 4 weeks, then we'll transplant them into a little bit larger containers and thin them out and go from there. So when I'm done with this, what I'm going to do is spray the top of the soil. You get a spray bottle. Let's see, we'll cover those little tomato seeds here. Some more soil. I'm gonna spray them like that. And a great technique is to bottom water as well. But since my soil is damp and I'm spraying them really good, I'm not gonna bottom water. I'm going to cover with a plastic tray that comes with this, there's a bottom tray here. So when you go to the garden center, you'll get a bottom tray to set your pots, your little 4-pack cells in, and then you'll cover it with this plastic, and this will keep it really moist. You won't have to water this at all for like a week, and then you'll see the sprouts come up, and when they start to touch the top and everything's sprouted, you'll take this lid off, and then you'll want to start your bottom watering, and just put like a 1/4 inch of water. You can use a little watering can or whatever you have, just to get 1/4 inch of water. I'll usually take one of these packs out, pour some water in the bottom, stick it back in, and that's a great way for the plants to soak up water. And these kinds of seedlings, the tomatoes and hot peppers and basil, they like to have some bottom heat, so you can also purchase these little heat mats if you want at the garden center, or maybe even at Home Depot or the hardware store. So those will slide underneath. And then I have a little shelf set up, and I will share a picture of that when I'm all done, and a couple of ideas for things you can purchase at home if you really do want to get a little mini seedling setup started, because you want to get some lights. Here's an example of the light I'll be using. And then I just buy these little hooks like that, some S-hooks and some chain at the hardware store, and I hang it into the wire shelf. So because the wire shelf is open, you can just attach those little S-hooks to the wire on the shelf above it, and it works as a really great system. So I'll show you some photos of that, what that looks like, and let me know what you guys are doing right now for your garden. Ask me any questions in the comments below, share any of your favorite tomatoes or any other tips that you want to share. I love to hear from you, and I will see you next week with another episode of spring gardening. Okay, have an awesome weekend, everybody. Bye.